Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, Brittany and I wanted to do a quick video discussing what it's like to live in the lakeside area when compared to some of the other places that we have lived in Mexico. We've been to many different places, gratefully. We've been privileged to be able to travel around Puerto Vallarta, Bucerías, La Paz, San Luis Potosí, Morelia, which is our absolute favorite place in the world. Well, in Mexico anyway, and many other places that my brain, León, so many other places that my brain can't even handle talking about right now. This is a very interesting place. It's very gentrified. Ajijic, even Jocotepec, it's kind of gentrifying. It's nowhere near like Ajijic or Chapala, but it certainly is getting there. You see a lot of foreigners moving in. This community, the lakeside community, it caters to foreigners. It's quite different than a lot of the other places in Mexico because of that. Now, while this area has a lot of beauty, like the lake, for example, the Malecón is very nice. Ajijic has its movie theater. You have a lot of nice restaurants with different types of food, whether that be Thai food, Mexican food, Italian food, all this different types of experiences that you can have. It also is missing a lot that we've noticed in other places.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are some of the things that the lakeside area is missing? What would you like to see different?
Maybe more like museums or like Morelia, for example. When you go to the Centro, you can really see you feel like you're kind of, I don't know if this kind of answer the question, but you feel kind of like you're in the past. And when you go to those museums or you go to those buildings, it's kind of nice because you can walk around there and you could, see the architecture and things like that. This area, Lakeside, Ajijic, Chapala, Jocotepec area, it's not the same. For example, if we were to compare it to like Morelia, like the architecture, things like that, I guess I'd like to see more of that, but I don't know if that really answers your question. I guess in terms of things to do, I think it'd be really nice. And again, these are things that... Hola.
Hola, buenas tardes. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? Oh, excelente. No, gracias. Más tarde.
Todos los días.
Okay.
Every day.
Okay, gracias.
Gracias.
Okay. Adiós.
So, like for example, something that I would love if the new town was to have, but of course not possible, is for the Lake Chapala to actually be like a beach.
Oh, well, yeah.
That can't happen though.
When you come through here, you're going to feel like you're in a beach area, but there's no beach. There's a lake, but it's certainly nowhere near like a beach.
No, put some sand in it, but it's not.
It's very small. It's not the tiniest of towns, right? When you talk about Lakeside in general, you're talking about a combination of towns surrounding the lake, Lake Chapala. It's certainly not small, but it's definitely not big. And so you get a very small town feel when you're here. Some of the things that we've seen in other towns, even small towns, are Walmarts that are stocked very well with American items. Surprisingly, in our experience, the Walmart here, for example, doesn't stock much vegan food. Just an example, Morelia, which is a super Mexican place in Michoacan, has vegan food. Things that Americans would personally buy, where Chapala, Ajijic, they don't have it. The Walmart is probably one of the most terrible Walmarts that we've ever been to.
They don't have like a lot of things that we like they don't have like Burger King, McDonald's.
Right.
They have like some pizza chains, but I mean, as far as like wanting like a Starbucks or something, they're, they don't have that. There's no Uber Eats here. There's no like big shopping malls. Or like, for example, we were in Morelia, we really like
Selecto Shadrawi.
That place is great. Pretty much if you're in this area and you want to go to like a big store and you want to go maybe, go somewhere that has more things, you have to go all the way to Guadalajara.
Right, and that's the thing. I've spoken to some of the locals actually, and they've actually told us that one of the reasons why this area is not more gentrified when it comes to stores, for example, like a Starbucks, like a McDonald's, like a Burger King, is because the foreigners, now whether this is true or not, I don't know, but this is what I've been told by more than a few people here, that the foreigners don't want it. They want the town to remain small. They want the town to remain like what people call a pueblita, a small indigenous town. They want it to remain like that. They don't want the big chain stores. They don't want the Staples. They don't want the Home Depot. They don't want this, they don't want that. Now, while I totally get it and while I can appreciate and understand it, that is honestly, in my opinion and in Brittany's opinion, holding this place back. That's one of the reasons why you're not going to have many younger foreigners moving here. And that's okay, I guess. But at the end of the day, you have a large majority of the foreigners who do live here, they're older. They don't mind. Maybe they don't care that they don't have Uber Eats. Maybe they don't care that they don't have Ubers for a majority of the time, because the only time you're going to catch an actual Uber around here is when they're coming through from Guadalajara, like Brittany mentioned earlier. Now, you might think, oh, well, I can just visit Guadalajara when I want a Starbucks or when I need to go to the Costco or something along those lines. Well, that's a good 40-minute to an hour maybe or more drive. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But in our opinion, we've been in Guadalajara. We spent some time there. And the shopping in Guadalajara is still not even the best. The best shopping that we've ever seen is Morelia, hands down. San Luis Potosí was very good. There's multiple places. La Paz was very good. So a lot of places that have more up-to-date, stores and things along those lines. That's what we're missing here. We've lived here for some months now, nurturing the investment property that we purchased, and we really do miss the modern-day conveniences that this town or these towns don't necessarily have. It is nice because things are a little bit more local. You're not supporting just big chains, you're supporting more local, but at the same time, that's a huge inconvenience and downside in many respects. So that's something that you need to keep in mind if you're going to consider living here. We have seen more young people here hanging around in these areas than probably other people have seen in the past. So there are people coming, but let me tell you, when you take away somebody's Uber Eats or you take away Ubers in general, you don't have any fast food and things along those lines, well, that's going to really impact how much youth you're going to have in the area, because the area is being held back and it's not modernizing. So you can't expect modern people to want to live in a not modern area to a certain degree. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's taxis here, but they're not the cheapest, and you may have to ask for a driver to drive you. I asked one driver, I need to go somewhere just for like a week, and it will cost, about $65 just to drive me a few minutes.
Right. So what Brittany's saying is we've actually experienced the taxis and the private drivers in these areas, because there's no actual Ubers, the drivers are actually much more expensive. So I'll give you a quick example. In Mexico City, where there's so many conveniences, it's ridiculously modern, and you're able to get from one end of the town to another end of the town for like $15 US in an Uber. You'll spend $40 to go from here to the town right next door. And the reason why is because it's not an Uber that's driving you, it's a regular taxi or a private driver. And of course, you're going to be spending more for that. So that's one of those things where it's kind of like, well, I don't really want to live here for those reasons. A lot of people do like living here because they find it to be convenient. They find the expat community to be very, very well structured and well rounded over here, which is true. There's lots of expats here. And so in that way, you're being catered to in a way that, for example, in Morelia, you will not be. You're going to have a lot harder of a time in Morelia being an expat if you don't speak Spanish. But there are those modern conveniences that this area just doesn't have, that even a lot of the foreigners here do want, or the Mexican people here do want. But because of the majority vote, of, from what I understand, the foreigners, they're not allowing to come in. So, you know, like again, the Starbucks, the Ubers, things of that nature, the Home Depot, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, really sad. I mean, I'm sure people in the comments or whoever's watching probably gonna disagree with me about this, but I think that's really sad because, you know, this whole area could be so much, I think, so much nicer if you just had, you know, a Starbucks, let's just say. Even just one, to put a Starbucks somewhere, or Uber Eats, which I find very interesting because, you know, with Uber Eats, for example, you know, you don't have to get on the phone, call someone and say, hey, you know, you don't have to speak Spanish. If you don't speak Spanish, you could just go on the app and then it'll translate for you, which is much easier. And I'm really surprised because, you know, a lot of expats here, they don't speak Spanish. So
Right.
I'm just curious about how do they, you know, because not all places here, the restaurants and things, the people speak English.
Right.
We found that out.
Yeah. Not every place and not every person here is going to cater to you necessarily in English. And so it does make sense. Foreigners would want certain conveniences, right? Especially an older community, because a majority of the foreigners here are older. They're not young. So don't you think it would be easier to pick up an app, order something, rather than have to walk out of, you know, to a store on the cobble streets or something along those lines in order to get what you need? I mean, yeah, it would be easier. It would be much easier. And so certain, again, modern day conveniences. Brittany grew up in upstate New York in a little town called Deposit that almost nobody has ever heard of. They have one movie theater, they have like one gas station, they have like one major supermarket, and these are reasons why that town is declining in population. You have no new blood moving in there. It's kind of similar here.
You have people moving in, but it's kind of older.
Yeah, you have people who do move into these areas here, Chapala, Ajijic, Jocotepec. We have seen younger people moving in. We have. I can't tell you I haven't. But it's certainly not at a rate like in Mexico City. And the reason why is because you just don't have modern day conveniences, and you don't have a lot of the things that the modern world has. You feel like you're left in the past here in a way. Now, again, you're probably going to be roasting me in the comments, but we're being honest.
Yeah.
We're telling you the truth.
I mean, you go to a place like Tlaquepaque, for example, that's a small town, but they have like, you know, they have more conveniences. You know, they got Starbucks. They have other like chains there. And it's probably, I don't know.
They have Uber Eats there.
They have Uber Eats in Tlaquepaque.
In Tlaquepaque.
Yeah.
So that's a very small pueblita. You can call that a pueblita. It's a little magic town. Very indigenous, and yet they have these modern conveniences. So you can mix the two. You absolutely can. And so you will see this town growing a lot less. And you know, we're just being honest. We're trying to tell you what we've seen. We're trying to tell you the truth. But we're not afraid of that. And the reason why is for two reasons. One, we need to be honest. We're not looking at lying or trying to trick anybody. But number two, the second reason is there's no way at the same time that you're not going to have young blood moving in, you will certainly always be having older blood move in. And again, younger blood is moving in just at a very slow rate. But you will certainly have older blood always moving in. And that is because these areas are so heavily invested in the expat community that when you come here, if this was your first stop off your plane coming from another country into Mexico, the expat community is so ingrained within the community that you're just going to be like, listen, this is too easy. This is too easy. I'm just going to stay here. It's just chill here. It's pretty here. The food's great here. The people are great here. I'm just going to stay here, especially if you're older, because it's just easy. You have the Lake Chapala Society, which helps orchestrate things for foreigners, help foreigners be able to move in, learn the language, meet people, and all this stuff. So because you have things like that, you're able to have an easier time here. But younger people, they're not afraid of doing the legwork. They're not afraid of learning the language. They're not afraid of picking up Google Translate and figuring out how to speak to people. Like us, this was not our first stop. We've been in towns that no one speaks English in. And we've gotten by and we've gotten around because we're learning the language and we're not afraid to try. If for the people who are afraid to try or they couldn't be bothered, over here would be great. But for the people who don't mind trying, they're going to be going to other places.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's a very cute little town. I think it has a lot of great things to offer. But you do have to remember, you're certainly not going to be bringing in young foreign blood in droves. Mexico City is another story. Gracias. Even Tlaquepaque, another story. Even La Paz is another story. Because when you go to La Paz, that's a very small town in comparison. They don't have a huge expat community by any means, but they do have modern conveniences.
Yeah.
And so without those modern conveniences, this town will be, and any other town in a similar position will be left behind in time.
This whole area, yes, you could get by without a car, you know.
Which is very nice.
I would say if you get by a car if you live in a centro, right? Now it is going to be, you know, more expensive if you live in the centro, like in most places.
Right.
It's more expensive. Generally speaking, maybe you can get a good deal.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's more money. And if you're not living in the centro, for example, well, it's going to be a little bit hard if you don't have a car because yes, you could call the taxi, but keep in mind, as you mentioned before, the taxis, the private drivers are not cheap. Like, is it less expensive than the U.S.? Of course, it is, to be honest with you. But it's not like, it's more expensive than Ubers, put it that way. Typical Ubers, right? And so here, hola.
Hola.
But here, for example, like we were mentioning you can get Ubers, but it's kind of more like a hit or miss thing. And so we've noticed some people, for example, they have golf carts. And you can get a golf cart. But you can't take that golf cart on the highway. You know, you're kind of limited. Some people here for transportation, they use like bicycles. A lot of bicyclists.
It's great. They got a really nice bike lane.
They do.
That goes from Chapala all the way into Ajijic and I think into Jocotepec as well.
Yeah, but if you're looking for a place where, you know, you just want to be able to walk to like a lot of conveniences, this may not be a place that you may want to live in because of that. For example, you go to a place like Guadalajara, you go to a place like San Luis Potosí, you could just get an inexpensive Uber, a relatively inexpensive Uber to take you somewhere.
Yeah, it is a big deal. A lot of the taxi drivers here, again, they're private drivers. They're not Ubers, they're private drivers and taxis. And so they're going to be more expensive, and that's fine. You also have the option of the bus. You can take the bus here, you know, if you want to venture into that area of travel. So you do have options here, which are very nice. It's nice to know you have a bus, you know, but just, again, some of those modern day conveniences, going months without a Starbucks or something along those lines, depending on the person, especially the younger you are, is going to be a big deal because many people are saying, hey, I want to move to Mexico. And the reason why is because I want a little bit more of a cheap way of life. That's where most people are coming from when it comes to the reason they're coming here. But at the same time, they're certainly probably not going to be moving to a place where they can't get a modern day convenience. The rest of the world is in 2023. Over here in maybe Ajijic, Chapala, Jocotepec, you know, they're not in 2023. They're in a year that's much, I don't even know what year it would be.
I don't even know.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
I don't even know.
It's like the past.
It's like in the past in many respects. Now, certainly not bashing the place, because if we didn't see potential in it, we certainly would not have invested here. It is absolutely beautiful. It's cute. The people are nice. The food is great. They do have other modern conveniences, you know what I mean? So it all depends on the way you're looking at things. It all comes down to the lifestyle you want to lead and the way you look at things and all that stuff. So certainly not putting the place down. Again, we love it here and we would not have invested in here otherwise. But there are a lot of things that would prevent us from ever wanting to live here permanently. Let me put it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me put it like that.
Like, let me put it this way. Like, if you're just looking, you're coming to Mexico and...
Buenas tardes.
And you're just planning on... Hola. And you're just planning on, you know, living here. Maybe you don't care about investing. Maybe you just want to live here, live in Mexico, maybe you have a whatever, you have a really good online job, let's just say, or some sort of income that you can live on without having to have an income property or whatever like that, then yeah, I would say like, Morelia is a great place for that. If you don't care about, if you speak Spanish or you plan on learning Spanish or things like that, I mean, you can get away in places like that without learning Spanish, but of course, we suggest you do learn Spanish, take lessons. There's areas over here that you can rent very affordably, right? In Lake Chapala. But are you going to want to be in those areas? That's another question.
Right. I think it's a good rule of thumb to say, you got all these people talking on how much do you need to live in Mexico? How much do you need to live in Mexico? So many videos talking about how much you live in it. Well, look, those videos really piss me off because they don't talk about a large majority of the things you actually need to hear about. But I will tell you, when it comes to rent, you can rent in Mexico anywhere from $250 USD, not talking about pesos, USD, to, the sky's the limit. But the lowest is probably a good 250 USD. You're going to be living in a place that certainly is not going to be modern. More than likely, you're not going to have any furniture, unfurnished place. You'll have a roof over your head. Now comes the food, now comes the transportation, now comes, everything else. You can find places for 250 USD. You're going to be typically, not all the time, but typically on a loud, very noisy Mexican street, tons of dogs barking. The road might be unpaved. That's what you're looking at.
In an apartment building, probably.
Well, maybe.
Maybe apartment.
Yeah, I don't know. You can live in a house. The house may not have a door. It may have a lot of the time you'll see in the more poorer communities, they'll just have a blanket hanging instead of a solid door. For $250 US, that's the kind of stuff you'll have. Now,
and we have friends that rent for that much.
Yeah, we have friends who rent for that much. We're not talking out of ignorance. Especially if you're in an area like this, Chapala, Ajijic, $250 is not going to get you all that much unless you get a really good deal somewhere.
And you're probably going to be up on the hills, somewhere in a very Mexican neighborhood.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
we actually prefer the Mexican neighborhoods. But in Morelia, for example, you're going to get a much higher quality of convenience in life for that $250 US.
Right. So is this the cheapest place in Mexico to be? Absolutely not where we are.
Right. No. It certainly isn't by any means.
Generally, yeah.
But again, we're not bashing this place. If you guys feel differently, that's fine. Let us know in a comment how you guys see it. And I guess we'll talk to you at the next video.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.